Right now, somewhere in the world, a stupid person is about to make a decision that will ruin everything you've worked for. They don't know you exist. They don't care about your dreams. And they have no idea their incompetence is about to become your crisis. Maybe they're cutting corners on a product you'll buy. Maybe they're approving a policy that will affect your industry. Maybe they are hiring someone who will eventually work for your company. The scariest part about living in a connected world is that your success is partially dependent on the competence of people you'll never meet. And most of them are making decisions based on ego instead of expertise. April 26, 1986, a date that changed the world forever. Not because of war, not because of natural disaster, but because of something far more dangerous than any weapon ever created. Something that lives inside every organization, every family, every community. Something that destroys more dreams than poverty, kills more visions than fear, and ruins more lives than any disease known to man. What am I talking about? Stupid people who think they're smart. That morning in Chernobyl, a nuclear technician named Leonid walked into the control room with 23 years of experience under his belt. 23 years. This wasn't some rookie making a mistake. This was a man who believed his experience made him untouchable. He had done this test procedure dozens of times before. He knew the system, or so he thought. The safety protocols clearly stated that the reactor power should never drop below a certain level during the test. But Leonid knew better. He had shortcuts. He had experience. Why follow some manual written by people sitting in offices when he was the one actually working with the machinery every day? So he disabled the safety systems. Not just one, not just two. He systematically turned off every single safety mechanism that stood between stability and catastrophe. His supervisor questioned him, "Leonid, are you sure about this?" But Leonid brushed him off with the confidence of a man who had never been wrong before. "I've been doing this since before you were born," he said. "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." 4 hours later, reactor number 4 exploded with the force of 500 atomic bombs. The radiation released that day was 400 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. 31 people died immediately. Thousands more would die from cancer in the years that followed. An entire city had to be abandoned. Farmland for hundreds of miles became uninhabitable. The economic damage reached into the hundreds of billions of dollars. All because one man was too stupid to know he was stupid. You see, there's a difference between being ignorant and being stupid. Ignorance is simply not knowing something, and that can be fixed with education. But stupidity is refusing to learn what you don't know. It's the arrogance of thinking your limited experience makes you an expert on everything. It's the dangerous combination of confidence and inconfidence that creates disasters. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the person who knows nothing. It's the person who knows just enough to be confident, but not enough to be competent. The person who has had some success and now believes they can't fail. The person who mistakes familiarity with mastery. I've seen it destroy businesses. A company owner who built one successful restaurant thinks he can open 50 without changing his approach. He refuses to listen to consultants, ignores market research, dismisses the advice of people who have scaled businesses before. "I know my customers," he says. "I know this business." 6 months later, he's filing for bankruptcy, taking down not just his own dreams, but the livelihoods of dozens of employees who trusted him. I've seen it destroy families. A father who provided for his children when they were young thinks this qualifies him to give them life advice when they're adults. He refuses to acknowledge that the world has changed, that his children face challenges he never encountered. Instead of listening and learning, he doubles down on outdated wisdom. His children stop calling, his grandchildren grow up as strangers. His relationships crumble because he was too proud to admit he didn't have all the answers. The tragedy of Chernobyl wasn't just about nuclear energy. It was about the human condition. It was about what happens when we let dangerous people make decisions that affect others. Because here's what you must understand. Stupid people don't just hurt themselves. They create ripple effects that destroy everything in their path. Leonid didn't die in that explosion. He lived for years afterward, probably never fully grasping the magnitude of what his arrogance had caused. But 31 families lost loved ones that day. Thousands of children were exposed to radiation that would cut their lives short. An entire region lost its future because one man was too stupid to follow safety protocols. This is why stupid people are dangerous. Not because they're evil, not because they have bad intentions, but because they have the power to make decisions without the wisdom to understand the consequences. They have confidence without competence. They have authority without understanding. And the most frightening part, they multiply. Stupid people attract other stupid people. They create environments where ignorance is celebrated and intelligence is seen as a threat. They build cultures where asking questions is discouraged and following procedures is seen as weakness. The nuclear industry learned from Chernobyl. They implemented new safety measures, better training programs, stricter oversight. But in every other area of life, we still allow stupid people to make decisions that affect us all. We elect them to office. We promote them to management positions. We give them platforms to influence others. We do this because they're confident, because they speak with authority, because they promise simple solutions to complex problems. But confidence without competence is not leadership. It's destruction waiting to happen. Authority without understanding is not strength. It's stupidity with power. And that's the most dangerous combination in the world. The question you must ask yourself is this: are you surrounded by people who make you smarter or people who make you more stupid? Because the people you allow into your inner circle will determine whether you build something great or watch it all come crashing down. 3 years ago, I met a man named Robert who learned this lesson the hard way. Robert had saved for 15 years to build his dream home. Not just any home, but the home where he planned to raise his children and grow old with his wife. He had the land, he had the money, and he had the vision. What he didn't have was the wisdom to recognize stupidity when it came knocking at his door. The contractor he hired came highly recommended by a friend. Jake had been in construction for 12 years and had built dozens of homes in the area. He spoke with confidence about soil conditions, foundation requirements, and building codes. He quoted a price that was $20,000 less than the other contractors. Robert was impressed. Here was a man who knew his business and could save him money. But Jake had a problem. He was too stupid to know what he didn't know. When the soil engineer recommended additional testing because of unusual clay deposits in the area, Jake dismissed it as unnecessary expense. I've built on this type of soil before, he said. I know what I'm doing. When the building inspector suggested deeper footings because of frost line requirements, Jake argued that he'd never had problems with his standard depth. These inspectors just want to create work for themselves, he told Robert. Trust me, I've been doing this for 12 years. Robert, wanting to believe in the man he'd hired, ignored the red flags. After all, Jake sounded so confident. He had an answer for everything. He made Robert feel foolish for questioning his methods. This is what stupid people do. They don't just make bad decisions. They make you feel bad for questioning their bad decisions. Construction began in March. By July, cracks appeared in the foundation. By September, the cracks had become chasms. By November, the entire structure was condemned. The house that was supposed to be Robert's legacy became a pile of rubble that cost him his life savings. But here's what made this story truly tragic. Jake didn't just walk away. He actually had the audacity to blame Robert for the failure. You should have told me about the soil conditions, he said. How was I supposed to know? This is the hallmark of stupidity. When things go wrong, stupid people never take responsibility. They always find someone else to blame. The difference between ignorance and stupidity became crystal clear in Robert's story. The soil engineer was ignorant about Jake's construction methods, but he was smart enough to know his limitations and recommend additional testing. The building inspector was ignorant about the specific challenges of Robert's property, But he was wise enough to suggest extra precautions. These people knew what they didn't know. Jake, on the other hand, was stupid. He didn't know what he didn't know. And worse, he refused to find out. He confused his 12 years of experience with 12 years of expertise. But experience without learning is just repetition. Doing something wrong for 12 years doesn't make you an expert. It makes you an experienced failure. Robert's story illustrates something crucial about stupidity. It doesn't just affect the stupid person. It creates a ripple effect that destroys everything around it. Robert lost his savings. His wife lost her dream home. His children lost their college fund. The subcontractors who worked on the project lost their payment. The suppliers lost their materials. Even the neighbors lost property value because of the condemned structure. One man's stupidity affected dozens of lives. This is why stupid people are dangerous. They don't exist in isolation. They create chaos that spreads like a virus, infecting everything they touch. They make decisions based on pride instead of principle, on arrogance instead of analysis, on stubbornness instead of study. The most insidious part of Robert's story is how Jake's confidence initially impressed everyone. Stupid people often sound more convincing than smart people because they don't have the burden of understanding complexity. Smart people know that most situations have nuances, variables, and potential complications. They speak with appropriate caution. Stupid people don't see the complexity, so they speak with absolute certainty. And unfortunately, certainty often sounds like competence to those who don't know better. Robert eventually rebuilt his home, but it took him another 5 years to save the money and recover from the financial devastation. He learned to recognize the warning signs of dangerous stupidity, but the lesson came at a cost that nearly destroyed his family. What's even more dangerous than one stupid person? A room full of stupid people who think they're smart. When stupidity gathers, it doesn't just add up. It multiplies. It creates an environment where bad ideas are reinforced, where questioning is discouraged, and where disaster becomes inevitable. January 28, 1986, 73 seconds after launch, the Space Shuttle Challenger broke apart, killing all 7 crew members aboard. The cause? A simple rubber O-ring that failed in cold weather. But that wasn't really the cause. The real cause was a room full of people who chose to ignore the warnings of their engineers. Morton Thiokol, the company that manufactured the rocket boosters, had engineers who were screaming warnings. They had data showing that the O-rings became unreliable in cold temperatures. They had documented evidence of previous close calls. They recommended postponing the launch until warmer weather. But they were dealing with something more powerful than physics. They were dealing with organizational stupidity. The NASA managers didn't want to hear about problems. They had schedules to meet, budgets to justify, political pressure to manage. When the engineers presented their concerns, the managers asked them to prove that it was unsafe to launch, instead of asking them to prove that it was safe. This backward thinking is typical of stupid organizations. They make smart people prove negatives instead of demanding proof of positives. But here's where it gets truly dangerous. The engineers, faced with organizational pressure, began to doubt their own expertise. They started second-guessing data they knew was accurate. They allowed managers who knew nothing about engineering to override technical decisions. They compromised their professional judgment to fit into a culture of willful ignorance. This is what happens when smart people are surrounded by stupidity. They don't just get dragged down. They actively participate in their own intellectual destruction. They begin to think that maybe they're wrong. Maybe their expertise doesn't matter. Maybe the confident voices of ignorant people carry more weight than the careful analysis of knowledgeable ones. Alan McDonald, the engineer who refused to sign off on the launch, was initially ostracized by his own company. He was threatened, demoted, and treated like a troublemaker. Not because he was wrong, but because he was right in an organization that had chosen to be wrong. This is how stupid cultures operate. They punish intelligence and reward compliance. 7 people died that day, not because of technical failure, but because of organizational stupidity. A culture had been created where appearance mattered more than reality, where schedule mattered more than safety, where politics mattered more than physics. When stupid people gather in groups, they create echo chambers where stupidity sounds like wisdom and wisdom sounds like betrayal. The most frightening part of the Challenger disaster wasn't the explosion, it was the investigation afterward, which revealed that this wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern. There had been multiple close calls that were ignored, multiple warnings that were dismissed, multiple opportunities to prevent the disaster that was squandered because intelligent voices were silenced by stupid cultures. This is why you must be extremely careful about the environments you enter and the organizations you join. Stupidity is contagious. It spreads through groupthink, through peer pressure, through the gradual erosion of standards. Before you know it, you're nodding along with decisions you know are wrong, staying silent when you should speak up, compromising your judgment to fit in with people who have no judgment at all. The question isn't whether you're smart enough to avoid stupid people. The question is whether you're strong enough to stand alone when surrounded by them. Let me tell you about Marcus, a brilliant entrepreneur who built a software company from nothing to $10 million in revenue in just 4 years. Marcus understood technology, he understood markets, and he understood customers. What he didn't understand was the cost of being nice to stupid people. When Marcus decided to expand his leadership team, he made a decision that nearly destroyed everything he had built. Instead of hiring based on competence, he hired based on personality. Instead of demanding excellence, he accepted mediocrity because it came with a smile. Instead of protecting his vision, he compromised it to avoid difficult conversations. He hired a chief marketing officer who talked a great game, but had never actually grown a business. The man had worked at large corporations where he managed budgets, but never generated results. He spoke fluently about brand strategy and market positioning, but when it came to actually acquiring customers, he was completely lost. Marcus knew this within the first month. But the man was likable, enthusiastic, and full of excuses that sounded reasonable. For 2 years, Marcus watched his marketing budget disappear with no measurable return. For 2 years. He listened to explanations about market conditions, competitive challenges, and brand building that takes time. For 2 years. He allowed a stupid person to burn through resources while his competitors gained ground. Why? Because Marcus was too nice to fire someone who was trying hard but failing completely. The real damage wasn't just the wasted money. It was the culture this created. Other employees began to think that results didn't matter as long as you had good intentions. Standards dropped across the organization. The high performers became frustrated and started looking for other opportunities. The mediocre performers became comfortable and stopped trying to improve. Marcus learned a painful truth. Being nice to stupid people is cruel to smart people. When you tolerate incompetence, you punish excellence. When you make excuses for poor performance, you insult those who deliver great performance. When you allow stupid people to waste resources, you steal opportunities from intelligent people who could use those resources productively. The turning point came when Marcus realized his company was hemorrhaging talent. His best developers left for companies that valued competence over congeniality. His top salespeople joined competitors who rewarded results over relationships. He was losing the very people who had built his success because he was too polite to remove the people who were destroying it. Marcus finally fired the marketing officer, but the damage was done. It took another year to rebuild his team, restore his culture, and regain market momentum. He learned that protecting stupid people from consequences doesn't help them grow. It just gives them more time to create damage. This is a crucial lesson for anyone building something meaningful. Your vision is not a democracy. Your standards are not negotiable. Your success is not a charity case for people who refuse to meet your expectations. You have a responsibility to protect your dream from those who don't understand it, don't respect it, and don't contribute to it. Stupid people will always have explanations for their failures. They will blame circumstances, timing, resources, or other people. They will appeal to your sympathy, your patience, your desire to be fair. But being fair to stupid people is unfair to everyone else. It's unfair to your customers who deserve better products. It's unfair to your employees who deserve better leadership. It's unfair to your investors who deserve better returns. Most importantly, it's unfair to your future self who deserves the success that stupidity prevents. The hardest part of building anything great is not the technical challenges or market competition. It's having the courage to say no to people who are destroying what you're trying to create. Even when they're nice people with good intentions. 25 years ago, I was that person. Not the stupid person, but the person who was influenced by stupid people. I was the person who stayed quiet when ignorance spoke loudly. I was the person who compromised my standards to fit in with mediocrity. I was the person who knew better but did worse because I was surrounded by people who celebrated being average. I worked for a company that sold training programs to corporations. The owner, David, was a charismatic man who could sell anything to anyone. He had built the company from nothing and genuinely believed he was helping people develop their potential. But David had a fatal flaw. He hired people based on their ability to make him feel good about himself, not their ability to make the company better. The sales team was full of people who told great stories but couldn't close deals. The training staff was full of people who were inspiring but couldn't measure results. The management team was full of people who agreed with everything David said, but had no ideas of their own. It was an organization built on enthusiasm rather than effectiveness, on good intentions rather than good outcome. I was the training director, responsible for developing programs that actually worked. But every time I tried to implement systems to measure learning outcomes, I was told I was being too analytical. Every time I suggested we focus on results rather than feelings, I was accused of being cold and calculating. Every time I recommended hiring trainers with proven track records instead of motivational speakers with great personalities, I was made to feel like I was missing the point. For 3 years, I watched the company struggle. We had clients who loved our energy but couldn't demonstrate any improvement in their organizations. We had testimonials about how inspired people felt, but no data showing they performed better. We had a reputation for being positive, but not for being effective. And slowly, I began to doubt my own judgment. Maybe results weren't everything. Maybe making people feel good was more important than making them better. Maybe I was too focused on measurement and missing the human element. This is what happens when you're surrounded by stupidity for too long. You start to think that maybe they're right and you're wrong. The wake-up call came during a client meeting. The CEO of a major corporation had hired us to improve his sales team's performance. After 6 months of our training, their numbers had actually gotten worse. When David presented the feedback forms showing how much the team enjoyed our sessions, the CEO looked at him with disgust. I don't care if they enjoyed it, he said. I care if they can sell. You've wasted 6 months of their time and my money teaching them to feel good about failure. I need people who can produce results, not people who can give each other high fives. He canceled the contract and demanded a refund. That night, I went home and looked at myself in the mirror. I had become someone I didn't recognize. I had compromised my professional standards to fit into a culture that celebrated mediocrity. I had allowed stupid people to make me question my own intelligence. I had traded my potential for popularity with people whose opinion shouldn't have mattered. The next morning, I walked into David's office and resigned. Not to join another company, but to start my own. I was tired of being dragged down by people who were content with being average. I was tired of explaining why excellence mattered to people who thought effort was enough. I was tired of apologizing for having standards. Starting my own company was terrifying. I had no clients, no reputation, and no safety net. But I had something more valuable than security. I had clarity. I knew exactly what kind of organization I wanted to build and exactly what kind of people I would surround myself with. I would hire based on competence, not charisma. I would measure results, not intentions. I would create an environment where intelligence was valued and stupidity was exposed. The first hire was the hardest. I interviewed dozens of candidates who looked good on paper and sounded good in person. But I had learned to look deeper. I gave them real problems to solve, not hypothetical scenarios to discuss. I asked them about their failures, not just their successes. I tested their ability to learn, not just their ability to perform tasks they already knew. When I found the right person, everything changed. Smart people attract other smart people. Excellence demands excellence. Standards create culture. Within 2 years, I had built a team of people who challenged each other, learned from each other, and elevated each other. We didn't just deliver training programs. We delivered measurable improvements in performance. Our clients didn't just feel good about our work. They saw real results. Sales teams increased revenue. Management teams improved efficiency. Organizations became more effective, not just more enthusiastic. We built a reputation based on outcomes, not just intention. But the most important transformation wasn't in my business, it was in me. I learned that leadership isn't about making everyone happy, it's about making everyone better. I learned that kindness isn't about accepting mediocrity, it's about demanding excellence from people who are capable of it. I learned that the greatest disservice you can do to someone is to accept their worst when you know they're capable of their best. Today, I speak to audiences around the world about potential, about purpose, about the principles that unlock human greatness, but I never forget where I came from. I never forget what it feels like to be surrounded by people who limit your thinking, lower your standards, and make you question your own capabilities. The difference between successful people and everyone else isn't talent, education, or opportunity. It's the people they choose to surround themselves with. Successful people understand that you become like the people you spend time with. They choose relationships that challenge them, environments that stretch them, and standards that elevate them. You have a choice to make. You can continue to surround yourself with people who make you comfortable with being average, or you can find people who make you uncomfortable with being anything less than extraordinary. You can continue to accept explanations for failure, or you can demand evidence of success. You can continue to be influenced by people who drag you down, or you can become the person who lifts others up. The world needs intelligent people to speak up, step up, and stand up. It needs people who refuse to accept stupidity as inevitable, mediocrity as acceptable, or failure as understandable. It needs people who create solutions instead of excuses, who build systems instead of making exceptions, who demand excellence instead of tolerating incompetence. Stop being nice to stupid people at the expense of smart people. Stop accepting mediocrity to avoid difficult conversations. Stop compromising your standards to make others comfortable with their lack of standards. Your potential is too valuable to waste on people who don't understand it. Your vision is too important to compromise for people who don't share it. Your future is too precious to sacrifice for people who have no future. The question isn't whether stupid people are dangerous. They are. The question is whether you're going to be one of them, one of their victims, or one of the people who rises above them to create something better. The choice is yours. But the consequences affect everyone around you. Choose wisely.